It has been said that architecture is frozen music. If you look at cities, we will soon find that urbanism is frozen politics. But we think it's time for a melting climate, the tropical climate of the meltdown of this sort of freeze. You have to imagine this tower in Caracas is a structure 45 floors high plus helicopter landing pad. It's a skeleton. It's actually a failed project in terms of a traditional North American Western skyscraper. But it is an absolutely new way of looking at the city. If you think about that building, which has no elevator, no air conditioning, it has no facade, it has also no formal water or electricity networks, but there are 3,000 people living inside. Isn't that curious?
Correct, and people are the real infrastructure. Not water pipes, not aqueducts, not sewage, but actually people. People working together. You, me, together we can make a network. And this is an infrastructure. And that's the beauty of this project, where architecture becomes words, discourse. It's about bringing people together and building the city.
So architects in that concept are actually moderators, animators, if you want, of change. And just like in the tower, we tried to replicate things that we have seen, that we have learned in the tower, and we built a space, a physical space, around something that people will need. We have been in the Biennale before, we have seen that there's actually a resting space, a sort of an island, an oasis, missing. And we thought if we could only use a space and create a framework around it where people could come together and enjoy this show, that would be a great idea. And luckily, the audiences, the people who have come here, accepted this idea.
And you are standing right now inside the Café Gran Horizonte on the 45th floor of the skyscraper of Caracas. You're looking out in the city, on the horizon, on the El Horizonte. And we are now here discussing exactly what is the future of architecture and what is the future of the city in the Sur Global, in the southern hemisphere, where the majority of the people live in the world.
We believe that this population in slums is a reason for architects, for urban designers to take on the challenge and make solutions by the masses. We hope that a lot of people get inspired here, students, colleagues, friends, and that they create solutions by the masses for the masses.
So when we got out of Columbia University, where we both got our master's degree and where we met in New York City, we ventured out to South America. We ventured to Caracas to see how we could build the new city. What we found was we had to unlearn everything we had learned in New York City was not applicable. So we went out into the city to see how people really lived. And it's about bringing the real world topics back into university and back into professional practice. Just behind this wall, on the back side of this wall, you will find the work of 1 year of how we're going to fix the tower, how we're going to bring electric energy, aeolic energy. We've studied the sun rays to put solar panels, hydroponic gardens, recuperate the rainwater with 6 months out of the year. It will fall inside the building in a hole, and with the fall of the water, we will create electric energy. That electric energy then will work the lifts and the lights in the public corridors. So this is the project we've been 1 year working with our office and ETH Zurich.
I would say that the Tower of David, how it stands now, is actually a perfect laboratory because 3,000 people are participating voluntarily in this laboratory, and we're inviting not only the Italian but the global industry, the construction industry, the industry of mechanic parts of solar panels, of lights, to test out in this laboratory if their products really can stand the test of time. We have found a great sponsor, Schindler Elevators, the world-leading elevator manufacturer, they wanted to know how a building, a skyscraper without an elevator can operate. We have found out and we have told them how it works, and it's certainly a place where we can redefine our way to think about what a skyscraper is in the 21st century. In Italy and around the world, any sane person would explain you that if you want to have a house on your own, you have to buy the land, get a plan, build your house, and then you move in. Alfredo and I have seen the exact opposite happening in the global south. People move into places, they start to construct, to build, they make some plans, it's a permanent feedback loop that might go over decades, and perhaps in the future, sometimes, they will acquire the land. So we are asking ourselves, couldn't we solve the housing crisis if we would make the land available as a commons, as a common ground, but also as a commons, as the idea of the almende, traditional medieval idea, we make land available for people to take it out of this commodity chain and occupy land, and a squat in Torre David is just that.
We do not endorse anything to do with squatting. We don't endorse any political ideologies. We don't think that this is the way to build a city. But we do think that we have to find new ways in which we can tackle the huge problem of social housing around the world.
Look, people say in the Torre David there are no handrails. It is obviously, if you go there the first time, quite irritating. But if you walk around here in Venice, there are no handrails towards the canal, and not all the people are falling in there either. Go to subway lines or into the Swiss Alps, people don't fall down in the tracks or in the mountains either. It's a style, it's a way of living. We believe that buildings should be safe, but our textbooks, our norms and our regulations are much too overloaded. We have to become more experimental again and start just like pioneers in cities. We have to start to redefine what we really need and get rid of the rest. I think with a lighter, more adequate idea of how we build.
To give you another example, Artigas, the famous Brazilian architect, the father of the Sao Paulo school, Artigas, built the greatest school of architecture. So it's a school to learn how to be an architect, and he put no railings. You have double height spaces between the auditorium and the corridors above with no railings. No one has fallen to date as far as I know. And did you know in Torre David, half of the population of Torre David are children. Half of them living here are children. So, and yes, there have been accidents, but there's also accidents in cities.
We came from South America and we have developed this project as a direct interchange of ideas between Caracas, between the urban think tank there, and between our chair, the urban think tank chair of architecture and urban design at the ETH in Zurich. So we believe that the dialogue should not be any longer north-north, and then we see what the south gets of it. We also don't believe in the south-south dialogue that is starting to happen. China is very eloquently participating in this dialogue. We believe we need a truly global dialogue, because only that way the three legs, that is tripod that we are facing now, urbanization, informalization and globalization stands on. And I think that Torre David in that sense is a perfect example what the results out of such a dialogue can mean.
So the Torre David, in a way, on a local level, is about necessity. It's about need. It's about missing housing units. For 2 million missing housing units in the city of Caracas on a local level. But on a global level, the discourse is the Tower of Babel, is the Tower of Knowledge. And we have to rethink how we want to live in cities. If you think modern architecture is not present on these walls, I tell you, look again, because Le Corbusier in 1917, the premier 20th century master modern architect, He invented the domino house, which is the famous floor slab and open stairwell with no walls. And this became the framework for modern architecture all over the world. Well, every day Hubert and I see this domino house being built in the cities of the slums around the world. The famous floor slab. And when Le Corbusier invented the domino house, he showed it without any walls, because he intended it to be put with the cheapest available building material and the rubble, the leftovers of the First World War. And so this is modern architecture with a social consciousness.
So in short, architecture and urban design will be taught in the future in live laboratories. It's not in textbooks. We're not passing on existing knowledge, but we at the Urban Think Tank at our chair at the ETH in Zurich, we're trying to produce knowledge with our students, with our doctorate master students, and we hope that we can build a toolbox of how to operate in cities, existing cities, with millions or even billions of people, and we hope that that will be an inspiration, just like the Tower of David and its inhabitants have been an inspiration for us.
However, we understand that we are only doing a project. It is only a proposition. We hand it out, like all of our prototypes, the music school, the autistic children's school, the cable car stations, the dry toilet, composting toilet. We make these projects as research projects with our office, and we give them away, open source. So we give this project of the tower to the community, to the government, to anyone who has the power to execute the project. With the Cultural Revolution now, and Tahrir Square has proved it, and with the Internet revolution, the open sourcing, the networking, the social media generation, we may not even own houses, we may not even own apartments. We move from place to place, to space to space. We sleep one night in one place, we work one night somewhere else. We can move. The shape of the city will change based on the shape of the lifestyle. Lifestyle will change the shape of the city.
Let's see, in many ways, people have actually forgotten how to perform, how to live. It's a sort of a prescription that is passed on to us by media, by the markets, what one should have: a car, a house, a front garden, a 3-bedroom apartment. But we have found out that people in the global south who don't have access to their information have actually carved out a self-definition of what living in cities is, in what housing in cities is. And many of the programs that you find in cities that are called and titled urbanization programs have actually de-urbanized areas. They've become monofunctional housing zones rather than multifunctional living zones.
The only constant about cities is change. Cities change. So if we want to preserve the life of cities, we must give the freedom up for cities to change in creative ways and not freeze it up by rigid laws and property tenures. And actually we have to rethink that idea of how a city is developed.
It's maybe very appropriate to mention Alfredo Tafuri, who was teaching and living here in Venice, and he wrote almost 30 years back a little book which is called Capitalism and Architectural Development. And in this book he actually ends almost in a sort of a frustration, looking at the history of architecture and architects, and closing that architecture has lost its relevance in society. And the reason why it has lost its relevance is that it has become too engaged in form, in the formal aspects of architecture and in the personal aspects of architecture. I would say it is very appropriate, and we are very happy that to get the Golden Line in Venice, the place where Tafuri taught at the university, and maybe to open a new chapter after many decades of debate and discussion and creation of form, and go once again into the organizational, operational level of architecture, to expand the bandwidth, the spot that has been assigned for architecture, to expand it both before a project starts and after a project starts, to create something that is relevant for society.
We really are actually not so comfortable with all this media attention because we are just guys who want to merge right into the walls. In fact, a lot of people told us these walls should be painted white. We prefer the walls like this, merging into the old building. The best architecture merges into the landscape, merges into the city, and actually is not so much seen and is assimilated into the morphology of a city. It looks natural. It looks like it's always been there. And so in that sense, but we will use this attention. We're very happy to get it now because we believe it might be the beginning of a kind of new generation of architects looking at the city in a different, alternative way.